Howdy, folks, and welcome to episode 76, Blood and Fury. We got a great group of guys here tonight. We've got Keith Tracton, the lead designer for World War 85. We got David Heath, the lead guy, the guy who's the big wig over at Lock and Load Publishing, and Jeff Schulte, the lead playtester for World War 85. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight.
Our pleasure.
Man, all these leads and no Indians. What are we doing wrong?
Hey, I'll gladly be an Indian for World War 85. I love the
don't
game.
say that. You're in. I'll find something for you to do.
It's a low ball.
Yeah. So I'm going to just hit a couple of things here real quickly. Like I was telling Keith when he first jumped on, my messages are very active. I'll keep track of all of them. When questions come up, I will filter them in for you guys, so y'all don't have to worry about watching for them. But we got Tiger Shadow. He was in early at 7:31 local. I was at 29 minutes before we started. He says, "Howdy, folks. Howdy, Tiger. Thanks for dropping in." Then Chuck shows up. He says, "I'm here for now." Well, Chuck, I'm glad you're here as always. Hissy Cat's coming in with a sup. He says, "Hi, guys." Chuck says, "Hissy." Yes, boss. Dave Hall, happy evening. Happy evening to you too, Dave. Chuck says, "I'll be up front, locking the load, and World War 85 are not on my need list." That's okay. You can still be here watching and enjoying it. Reach Crawford comes in with a "Hey, y'all." Howdy, sir. His cat says, "I don't have a need list, it's just a want list."
Like the rest of us.
Yep. Tiger says, "Wow, all these people." Yeah, it's been a while since I've had this many people on the show at one time.
Uh-huh.
So Chuck says, "Got a package from Noble Knight today and tomorrow, one from Miniature Market Miniatures, and lots of dice and one solo war game." Oh, outstanding, Chuck. We got E4 Airmen, Hot Central Ohio.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think I'm in a pocket of Arctic proportions at only 84 here in Central Illinois. So, and Crossing Obstacle Games all the way over from, if I remember correctly, Sweden.
Oh, really? Cool.
Hey all. So it is very late over there. Hope if you're not watching. If you're not going to watch live all night, you'll definitely want to catch it on the replay. So, and then Reese says 105 here today. He's down in Arkansas. So
105 in Pueblo, Colorado.
Says I have to watch this on the replay tomorrow. Just wanted to drop by and say hi. Have a nice stream. Thanks, sir. Definitely, take a look and give us any comments. Any questions you might have for it to me, and I'll get it over to these guys, and we'll make sure we get them answered for you. So thanks for dropping in. So before we dive into World War 85 and Blood and Fury, going to do a little bit of housekeeping. First off, as y'all may or may not know, we hit 200 last week. In fact, a week ago today, we hit 200. We're now at 208. For anybody that is watching this, for the first time because you got drawn in because it's Lock and Load or whatever, hopefully you like what you see here, and you'll hit that subscribe button, hit the little like button, the little bell thingy that makes it ding whenever I put something up, and so we can grow. Because we hit 200 before the end of July, we are going to have our contest. There is a video up for y'all to go check out. The winner of the drawing, which I'm thinking is going to be next Wednesday, it's going to be live next Wednesday, will receive the Chronicles of Not Jay t-shirt. You'll also receive your choice of nationalities. Tell me in there. I'm thinking 8 to 10 ships each nationality, and we're talking these little guys right here. 1/6000 scale World War II.
Shiny.
This is USS Portland. I also just recently did this little guy. This is a Salvatore class destroyer from Italy with the red stripes on the
Nice.
red stripes there. Yeah. So I'm thinking 2 battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 4 destroyers of
Your
each.
own task force.
Yeah, for each. Plus, as I said before, I'll send you my in progress rules for Ocean Thunder, my own World War II naval combat game. So y'all can you could be like Jeff, be my primary playtester outside of my little brain. And then, of course, the sheets you need to play the game with. So remember, if we hit 300 by December, you're going to get a Darth Vader and an old Obi-Wan Kenobi miniature painted. Your choice of pose from the options I've got. And if we, by chance, happen to hit 300 by the end of October, by October 31st, you'll get a total of 5 Rebels, 5 Imperials done up as a Fistful of Lead crew for Fistful of Lead Galactic Heroes, the cards to go with them, and a PDF of Fistful of Lead Galactic Heroes. So tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell your enemies, have them come and join us and have fun. All right, guys. So, one last thing. We do have Battles and Brews coming up at the end of this month. Not this Friday, but next Friday. Over there in Independence, Missouri, just outside of Kansas City. If you're in the area, come by and see us. We're going to have a lot of fun. So, all right. All that's done with. What we're really here to talk about is the new crowdfunding over on GameFound for World War 85 Volume 2 Blood and Fury. So guys, hop in real quick, and Keith, will go ahead and start with you. Understandable as to why it's taken so long for us to get Volume 2 after Storming the Gap came out, because, well, the world got turned upside down and shaken.
COVID.
Yeah. We got it felt like we got turned upside down and shaken out for our pocket change. But what go ahead and give us a little bit of what Blood and Fury is going to be all about.
So Blood and Fury, just to backtrack a second, Storming the Gap, the first volume was centered on the Fulda Gap. Blood and Fury is centered on the North German plain. When we went through the orders of battle, it was time to bring the British in. So you have basically the entire World at War 85 British order battle. Jeff, was a battalion plus 2 battalions?
Yeah, you have a tank regiment, basically, and a infantry battalion.
Infantry battalion. And, of course...
And other formations.
Right. All additional attachments, you can make reinforced things. So we went, to fill out the British. The West Germans, it's their war. I mean, it's, for the moment they're in Europe, it's there in West Germany, so they have to be in this. They have to provide the forces there. So we have more West German units. They're not exactly the same as Storming the Gap. One notable difference is we have a company of Luftland, of German paratroopers. And they have the helicopters to transport them where they need to go, although you can always drop them with the parachute rules. Usual complement of leaders. A small contingent of United States forces, because there was a brigade up there. And they actually have some pretty good equipment. You'll see some Apaches with them, notably. And then a lot of Soviets, because it was a main thrust. And you can have whatever NATO forces you have, but unless you have a lot of Soviets with like a regimental push, a regimental plus push, 2 regiments, it won't feel like the Soviets. So there's a whole ton of equipment. They also have a larger but a different support weapon selection. So you'll see a number of the anti-tank guided missile, the tube launch, the tank launched anti-tank guided missiles, the Spandrel and stuff like that. There's 2 or 3 of those. In fact, I think the Spandrel has an infantry version, the infantry teams, which is an infantry support weapon, and also the tank launched ones, which is a tank support weapon, which we don't have too many of, but they're there. And that we call them ARMs, alternative armament support weapons, because it allows us to give these missiles to tanks, but we can even change the missiles on a helicopter down the line in the series. We haven't done that here, but there's plenty of helicopters. There's plenty of transport helicopters. So you can have your usual air assault battalion handy and ready to go. Comes with 4 maps. They are geomorphic. So the 4 base maps in Blood and Fury will fit, long side to long side, short side to short side with the 4 maps in Storming the Gap. If you have here we are, right on the maps. So there's the 4 geomorphic maps, and we leverage 1, 2, 3, or all 4 for the 14 scenarios. We like to have a selection of smaller scenarios because we know you guys sometimes just want to play and you're short on time. So we tested the heck out of those like we did for Storming the Gap, but we have a higher proportion of 1 mappers, but we still have 2, 3s, and 4s. If you have the expansion for Storming the Gap, the first one, Defense of Frankfurt, that had 8 maps, and when you put them in a specific formation, they're a section northwest of Frankfurt. In fact, the suburbs of Frankfurt are on the lower right corner if you're looking at it top to bottom. But those 8 maps are also all geomorphic. So now you've got those 8 maps plus the 4 in Storming the Gap plus the 4 in Blood and Fury if you happen to have the first thing. So geomorphic maps are really helpful in that respect. Chris, you want to go down the list of the game found information that we have, and we can see if people have any questions. So we're gonna have 8 counter sheets. One of those counter sheets is going to be, hopefully with the expansion, we're going to have a campaign game in there, and that'll need its own set of counters. But basically, 8 counter sheets. You can see there in the middle, like the big red one, that's the Soviets, and then just to the left, there's even more Soviets. The brown on the 2 sheets, the second and third one, are the British, and then of course the gray on the left, and then the Americans at the top of that, and the gray on the left is the West Germans, and then the rest are markers and supporting things. The player aids, it's a selection that's similar to Storming the Gap, and we had questions about this on the Facebook page because people are like, are we going to get the same stuff? I'm like, it's the same game. However, the national unit tables, there were 8 cards, 8 11x17s in Storming the Gap. Mm-hmm. We're moving those into the companion book, which is the new name for the modular scenario book. So that way you have it all in one place with the particular game that you have. You don't need to futz around with 8 more cards. But the basic stuff is the tracks and tables that you need to play a World at War 85 game. We adjust the graphics to represent the game you're in. So on the left side there's the Blood and Fury, units and markers thing. So instead of having counters from Storming the Gap, you'll have counters from Blood and Fury. The logos are all Blood and Fury. If there were any adjustments, because there were some things that were covered by the clarifications for Storming the Gap, then they're implemented. Also, there's going to be terrains on the expansion to this game, it was the add-on Operation Red Gauntlet, which has the monster maps in it, the 8 maps for this setup. And those are going to have new terrains, and those new terrains are going to be on the terrain effects chart for Blood and Fury because they're an expansion for Blood and Fury. But the other tables are going to be very similar to what you've seen, and there's kind of no real way of getting out of that because it is a World of War 85 series game.
And like I was saying before we went live, I like the idea. Yeah, they might be very similar, but I like the fact that it's going to be self-contained. If I just want to go to my game club or go to my game store or go wherever I'm going to go with it and just have Blood and Fury, I just pick up that box and go.
Right. You'll have everything.
I don't have to drag anything from Storming the Gap with me. Also, there may be people that didn't get Storming the Gap, don't want to get Storming the Gap because they've got no interest in fighting Fulda Gap. They're, they may be from England and they want their British units. So, yeah, it makes sense to me.
I mean, that's exactly why we plan the series from day one as standalone games, and it's exactly what you said there. It's like, if you get to the Arab Israeli module, it's like, Well, what if you don't want to do that? Well, you don't have to buy that one, but you'll still have the other games. But anything you do buy, with the exception of some of the monster maps, and I can explain that a little later, they're going to be geomorphic, so you're going to be able to use them. There'll probably be some climate changes for some areas, but generally speaking, you'll be able to use the geomorphic maps.
Don't forget, they can't get the special ticket if they don't buy every game, though.
Is that where you put the golden ticket in the last game?
One of every game.
Yep. And then, of course, you've got the campaign cards,
right?
Which I like.
No, go ahead. You finish what you're saying.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so the campaign game, which originated with Jeff, this was his idea from Storming the Gap, and we got a lot of feedback on it, basically to make it a little bit more compact, so that things happen a little faster. And then Jeff came up with a great idea of, well, why don't we put the actual map configurations on the different areas? So that the lower left there, that map is the campaign map, and there's going to be one for the Soviets and one for NATO. And you simultaneously move your headquarters units, basically representing your formations that you've purchased across the map, and then you guys, call it out and say, if there's an area where there's both forces, the maps that are indicated in the orientation they're indicated inside of the white boxes there. That's what the scenario you play on, and then the road direction you're coming from is the direction you come from on the map, and then anybody in an adjacent area can be reinforcements, and they will enter whatever number of turns afterwards. So we have the rules to do all that, but it's very compact. There is one player aid for that, and it's that right hand card, and basically it has what are the markers, what's the sequence of play, and then the lower right there is actually the tables to bring forces back, replacements between battles, between days, because
that's nice.
I have a lot of experience with people ask for linked scenarios, and I have a lot of experience with that going back to Squad Leader, actually. If anybody knows what the Battalion Command campaign game was, the issue was always in a linked scenario. People are like, well, you take what forces are left and then you go to the next map. Problem with that is war games have a much higher casualty rate than real life. So you're not going to end up, you screw up and you're not going to have very many. And suddenly that next scenario is a mismatch for, no reason that for preventable reasons.
Right.
So what I said to Jeff was, and the challenge he accepted and has succeeded in, is I said, we will not have, a campaign game without some sort of replacement system. So he came up with a very simple, very clean one. And you'll get back steps, you'll get back full units, depending on what you roll. It also depends on whether you control the battlefield, which is a big deal. If anybody's read anything about, the Israeli wars, the Israelis were, they took casualties in their tanks, but they were just much better at getting them back into the line in a day. And that's kind of control of the battlefield is essential to that. So there's a little variation in the table on that. So,
and the other thing too is, as many rule books say, the elimination of a unit doesn't mean every single man is killed and every single tank is destroyed.
Right.
So.
Right.
It's a
just at that particular point in time, they are just combat ineffective.
Right.
Correct.
If you knock out its drivetrain, it's an M kill. It's not going anywhere. So do you track it in a platoon size game? No. You call that a disruption, or you call that a reduction.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. That's a whole design discussion. We have our usual slew of formation cards where you can basically change the identity of the same color band units by swapping in another card. Generally, NATO has similar morale training and command ranges, but there's some variations for the scratch forces. It's the template was made by Mark von Marshall, and it's just beautiful, and we just vary it for each formation. But we have so many cards sometimes that we don't have ones that we've used because they're for you for design your own.
Right.
A new, I guess this is new. In the center there are the Solitaire Assistant cards. There is a published Solitaire Assistant for World War 85 and Nations at War. This is an upgrade. We took feedback from people and we added a couple of conveniences, took off the dice, and we codified categories of cards that we can customize these decks so that it has stuff for the British and the Soviets and the West Germans.
Can I just interrupt one thing? You
Yeah.
said upgrade, and I don't want to confuse people. It's not an upgrade to the other Solitaire.
No. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's got a different set of stuff. You can use either,
Right.
but this is going to come with it. So, and it does have some stuff in it that's customized where the Soviets have some interesting capabilities, as do the British. And we really think you'll enjoy it. It'll
Very
allow
nice.
you to. Was that?
Is it very nice?
Oh, okay. Then at the bottom there, what we found we had as a stretch goal, but it's going to go into the box in this one, unless David tells me I'm wrong.
No, you're wrong.
Data cards. What was that?
You're right.
Yeah. Okay. So go in the box. So data cards, and these proved to be very popular as a stretch goal.
I love them.
They're the biggest picture of the counter you get. It's front and back. They've been redesigned for this for two reasons. One is we wanted to get all of the capabilities and rule references for that unit that it uses in that right-hand box. The second thing was we had on the first Storm in the Gap cards various miniature scales if you wanted to play with miniatures. What came back to us, though, was that, and what we found in the research later was there's no agreement on what, let's say, a 6mm scale is. For us, it's ground scale. So we give you a place to write the values in the scale of whatever game you're playing. So that's the lower left. There's some empty boxes, but we give you the conversion factor, which is 1 hex, which is going to be coming from the 1 hex is going to be on the counter. Picture the counter equals 150 yards, or a little bit rounded up, 165 meters. You get to do the math from there for your scale. So if your ground scale says a centimeter is 100 yards, you're going to be able to calculate the centimeters to put into that box.
Oh, okay.
We hope you guys will like that.
I actually was going to ask if you were going to have the scale model conversions, and I think honestly this is a better system. I'm not going to ask about Storming the Gap and making changes there because we discussed that.
Yeah. And in the end, the math doesn't change.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you want to do it yourself for Storming the Gap, do it yourself.
Just to say, Chris, too, on Storming the Gap, the cards do have a spot for you to put in, but we put 3 different spots.
Sure.
With the measurements. Well, now we don't tell you what the measurements are. We just say if it's 6mm, you put your numbers in. If it's 12mm, you put your numbers in.
Exactly.
Yeah. In
exactly.
this case, it's like you're going to take the unit and you're going to translate all the values, the ranges basically into whatever scale you're using, and you write them in those boxes in the lower left there.
Because the miniature gamers that came back to us who loved this, even the guys using the same scale didn't agree on the same amount of movement or area, and it was just easy to let them decide what to do.
So, okay. I mean, this is all getting packed into the box, which is one reason why this is slightly different. These things were like stretch goals on Storming the Gap because Kickstarter's just different. Game Found allows us to pack a lot more in the box, and then you guys know what's in the box, and then you can see the add-ons, and they're valuable too. But you're going to get a lot in the box itself. So you've got a Solitaire assistant in the box. You've got your data cards in the box. Your usual formations come with the game, obviously, because you have to play it with them. Geomorphic maps, 7 counter sheets, all the markers you need. Oh, one thing about the markers. There's a lot of markers that people wanted to be able to visually and physically be able to determine where the marker was in their stack. So we shifted a lot of the markers to be round. So like your ops complete markers are going to be round.
Okay.
And they're also going to be 2 different colors because people are like, they're all red. And they're like, can we have red for the Pact and blue for NATO? And Jeff looked at me and said, told you so. Oh, all right. I was wrong. So we're going to go with red and blue. Which I think will really help people because visually you'll be able to distinguish for those who put those on top that you'll see the front line, if you will. What's our next graphic here?
Just kind of an overview of the box with the box art and what it would look like out on the table. It is amazing. The AV8 or in this case, it's not the AV8. It's the Hawker Siddeley Harrier.
Yeah,
it's one of my all-time favorite aircraft. To me, it sits up there. The uglier it is, the prettier it is. It's up there with the A-10 for me as one of my favorite aircraft from the Cold War.
Well, you're going to get all three. You're going to get that and British tornadoes in this for.
Oh yeah, and I love the tornado
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah.
and then just example of the tokens on the counters.
Yeah. So here's a good selection of the NATO forces. So like I said, I'll start on the lower right. That's the Apache for the U.S. And then of course there's going to be a company of Abrams. One of the new things for the West Germans, the right-hand column, the second counter down, the Kraka TOW2. And what this is the paratroopers use these. And it's not a support weapon, it's a vehicle. It is literally the size of a giant suitcase when you fold it in half to carry it on the helicopter. It carries 4 tows. So you get a section of these. If you had 9 helicopters, you might have 3 Krakas, so you get a platoon marker. So yeah, that comes in with the paratroopers. Not to mention their infantry tow teams and Milan teams. So one of the scenarios, Nicholas Michon, who's our other developer and playtester, he came up with a scenario that the West German paras come in their helicopters, and they don't have a Kraka, but no, they do have a Kraka. We added a Kraka in because I said, "Where's the Kraka?" They each have an anti-tank guided missile support weapon teams. They each have either the HQ or a leader, so they're all independent. And their job is basically to plop themselves down in front of major Soviet tank reinforcements and be the defense until somebody else shows up, like the chieftains.
Nice.
So it's going to be an exciting scenario.
A quick question. I'm looking at the M1 Abrams here.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers look the same as Storming the Gap. So everything is throughout the series. We're hoping to continue to an M1 is an M1 is an M1 no matter what.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely right. If there were any little things that we missed, unfortunately we didn't miss anything major. You might see a different value in Blood and Fury, but there's no reason not to use the original value in Storming the Gap. It's just that we kind of went, well, maybe we'll change something. But we didn't do that too much because we don't want to do that. We really do want to have it be consistent. That when you see a T-64 and in Blood and Fury, and you see a T-64 later down the line, that it's the same unit.
Right.
So here's a good bunch of Soviets. Fun things here. Well, you got that spandrel on the lower right. That's the spandrel ARM. It says ARM on there. That's the one that gets plopped on a T-80 and basically gives them this anti-tank guided missile that can be fired out of the tubes. And then and you can fire it with your regular gun. It's like any other support weapon. When you have a 5 to 15 minute turn, yeah, you can fire your missiles and you can swap over your ammo. It takes a little time, but you can swap over your ammo. And it's just so much fun.
Right.
We do have the HIP helicopters in the middle, and then also the MO2 hoplites, which they basically carry like Saggers. So they're not great, but they're there. And of course, as usual, the formidable Mi-24 Hind E. And then below that, your air assault infantry and supporting mortars and anti-tank guns. And you've got Su-24s in this for close air support. Along with the Su-25s. So the close air support for the Soviets are Su-24, S-25. The Americans get an A-10. The British get a Tornado and a Harrier, and the West Germans get a Tornado. So there's a bunch of air running around. When you have it up there, it's kind of potent.
Well, we've been joined by Jeff from Hex to Hex. He is my primary board game player on. He's got his own channel, but he comes on the show from time to time and helps me out. So, Jeff, we got Keith, Jeff, and David with us.
Nice to meet
from
you.
Lock and Load.
Hey, that tow. You talk about dropping 2 of those Krakas down in there to hold a line. Well, if you've ever seen a tow missile hit a live vehicle, you see why it would scare off something.
Right. And not even at short range, at long range.
Yeah, Jeff actually is a Army vet from that time frame and that Fulda Gap area.
Excellent.
Many trips.
Thank you for your service.
So
I was a scout, so the tow missile was tow and dragon were a primary for us.
Right. Excellent.
So what we've got this going. What what's the goal? What are we looking at for number of supporters or number of dollar amount? I know we've got some stretch goals here.
Well, the biggest change for this in our philosophy as a company, if you want to put it that way, is Storming the Gap. We sat down, we came with the basics. We laughed at how popular it wouldn't be over dinner, all Jeff, me, and Keith.
First conversation. What if it fails?
And then it was, what if it's really successful? We should consider that. We're not going to worry about that. And we made all these stretch goals, and I kind of feel the pendulum has changed a little bit. But we're even aren't so much looking for the little bright light here, special light over there. And they are much more wanting to get everything in the box. You don't want to say, hey, we need to get to this point to get to your solo system, or we need to get to this point to get the extra map. And honestly, Keith and Jeff and Nicholas and a lot of other guys have already done all the work. And we had extra time. So what we did was we put everything in the box from day one, and all of our stretch goals, none of them are game related to the extent that, hey, you're not going to get these 3 scenarios unless we get to 50,000. So and that's the biggest change we've made as a group. So you buy day one, you buy 30 seconds before the campaign ends. As far as how many people, how much money, as much as you can get. It makes it much more palatable for us to keep going, obviously.
Sure.
But we also know too that there's not the pandemic so much anymore, but the economy is not what it used to be, and people are having time making ends meet, and which is another reason why we put everything in the box.
Sure.
So that answers your question.
Let's go ahead, and I'm going to run through some comments here real quickly. Yeah, he's in Sweden. It was 3 a.m. there at 8 o'clock. So it's now 3:30 in the morning. E4 Airman says, very kind of you, referring to my giveaway. His cat says, wow, Crossing, go to sleep. He says, on my way. Have a great stream. Chris Long from Canada is coming in with, there we go, with a hello, gents. Hello, Chris. He says hello, John Longshore, one of my longtime viewers, comes in with a wave. This is Jeff, my Jeff, not Mr. Schulte. Jeff has a great channel. He does. Professor Hex, and then Jeff responding to everybody. John Longshore does have a question. Why not Kickstarter? I'm not sure what GameFound even is. So let me see if I get this right. And David, you can let me know if I'm, barking up a tree here. So I guess Kickstarter kind of limits you in the way you can do things, where GameFound seems to be a little more game focused, being that it's called GameFound. It's more along the lines of what you're wanting to do with the campaign. Whereas with Kickstarter, there was something that you just didn't like about it.
It wasn't. I like Kickstarter. Okay, there is a big issue with Kickstarter, which I don't want to go into. Okay, that's
fine.
Not going to help anybody. That was one issue. It's only one of a couple of things. The main reason we went to GameFound is because the whole thing is integrated. Okay, so we put the whole thing together, they approve it, make sure it's good, we're following the rules, and then you move over. And when the campaign is over, it automatically has what we would call the back end or the after, to do the shipping and everything else. And it just moves it all over. Back-a-Kit, which I like a lot, by the way, and I like the guys over there, that system was really good too. And it integrated pretty well with Kickstarter. The problem is there's a lot of, honestly, politics going on at Kickstarter, which makes life a little bit more complicated. And so we decided, hey, GameFound was willing to work with us, and honestly, it did a really nice job on Heroes of the Bitter Harvest for us for Lucknow Tactical, so we kind of moved over.
Outstanding. All right. So looking at, I'm on the GameFound website, and that's where I've got those images from. I grabbed them from there, but it looks like we've got starting on Monday. Now, what time does it go live on Monday?
It's 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So
Okay, so noon my time and 1 p.m. Eastern. Right? Sound right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 1 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
It'll be 10 a.m. West Coast time.
Right. Okay. So, and if you live outside the States, y'all can figure out the time differential your damn self. I'm not
Or
a
if you
world
want,
clock.
you can email me and I can send it to you, but that would be ridiculous.
Yeah, right. So, set of world clock alarm. We've all got the fancy space phones. You can set it up yourself. But the reason I bring this up is that the first 100 backers are going to be able to get the core box for $100.
Right.
Now, keep in mind, yes, it is more expensive than Storming the Gap was. If I remember correctly, Storming the Gap came in at $85, I think. But you're getting you're getting the card, the data cards. You're getting the solo assistant. You know, you're getting everything you need or
The
would
campaign
want,
game too.
and the campaign game.
Yeah.
All in there, done is done. If you're not one of the top 100, it's only 100. It's 110. So still a great deal. You're going to want to get in on this. You're going to want to be a part of it because I love the system. My top two loves in gaming is, and this makes Hex cringe every time I say it, World War II naval and Cold War Europe.
That was worth it just for the expression.
We don't need anything on the water. Give me close air support tanks and grunts.
Yep. And this has got plenty of it. Absolutely plenty of it. So, the main strike is only 110. Now, it looks like y'all are hoping for a fulfillment in December. How confident are y'all?
Well, we have a new printer. Okay. One of the things we got to fix during the pandemic was, why is it taking us so long to maneuver the game? So we kind of stacked different games up. And the printer in China that we're picking now, barring pandemic, ship sinking, some other disaster I can't come up with.
Right.
Once this game, the campaign is done, the artwork, I'm going to say probably all of it, but let's just say 95 to be safe, is given to China, and we're going to get a prototype within 30 days. That's their promise. So I say 60 days because I feel safer. But once they give us the prototype, honestly, we can hit the print button and the games get printed. Okay. Part of the other reason too is a lot of companies, in order to make the next, let's say, tier of a discount. So let's just say the next tier is 1,500. So we're at 1,200, and they will stay and hold on to the late pledges, as they're called, till they get to very close or to the 1,500 mark. We're not doing that. If we get, 1,100 orders, let's say, I'm ordering, 1,200, 1,300 games, whatever I feel comfortable ordering, and that's the end of it. So this way, the printer can literally go and get boxed. And point blank, when I gave her the green light with the prototype, it took her literally less than 5 weeks to get the whole thing boxed. We had one little prototype snafu, and she was very quick on the dime to fix that for us.
Nice.
She did it in under a week.
Good. Outstanding. Yeah, I saw the photo of everything boxed up and shrink wrapped and ready to go.
Yeah.
For the other one. So that's good to see. Now, you do have some stretch goals. They are not quote unquote game changers. They're not adding what they're adding is polish, I guess you would say.
No, that's a good word for it.
If you hit 28,000 in pledges, the cards are going to have a linen card finish, which makes them nice, and they don't stick to each other as much. They've got a nice texture. They're not glossy, so they look good on camera. If you hit 32,000, you're going to get. This is the one that I'm most excited about. I'm hoping that you hit 32,000 because I want to see the flight stands. I think that is such a cool concept that those could easily be used with other games.
Yes.
Because what they are is, I guess they sit up about 2 inches, inch and a half,
They're
2
about
inches.
2 inches off the map. Okay?
Yeah.
And they're the size of the hexes, or maybe a little bit bigger, but they're basically the size of the hexes of the map. And the object of it is you can put your planes or your airborne units that are in flight on these stands and move them this way. They're really, again, if we never made this or we never came up with it, it's not going to stop you. And that picture is a little off, by the way, because it shows the stand as being this humongous thing. You know, it looks like you
Right.
put on there too. It's really about the size of the hex. So the hex, I'm not sure what the hex size is. Maybe keep those, but
It's about an inch side to side
so
physically.
the count the stand is about an inch side to side. And the whole
Okay.
object is you can just pick up the corner of the stand and move it with your planes, whatever you're doing. And it gives you a real easy visual of what's in flight, what's not. And
It's going to make your attack helicopters look doubly scary.
I love the idea. That is the one that I am most excited for.
We have to give the shout out to Blackwell Hurd.
Yeah.
It was his idea, and he's one of our graphic guys, and he just said, well, "What about this?" And I will say he's a Twilight Imperium fanatic. And one of the things that we saw was that you could put the spaceships on top of that. And he said, "What do you think of that?" And I was just like, "Maybe." And he literally designed this overnight, gave it to the printer, and the printer says, "Yeah, we can do that," and asked for some specs, and she already had it all worked out with him.
Nice.
In like
Very nice.
24 hours.
Najee, zoom in on that stand again, please.
Is that good enough for you?
Well, bring the pic. Yeah. So it's peg legs going down, so it's cool. So units underneath it, that'll be
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept.
I think it's ingenious. I love it.
I hate, I play these monsters where there's 10 damn units stacked in a hex, and then you throw air on top of it, and it becomes a nightmare.
Yep.
So there's
Yep.
Right. You
novel
figure
concept
that
there.
the geography of it is, the geometry of it is such that, the square units don't fill the hex. So if you build the legs over the hex vertices, it's always going to be clear. So it's an easy make.
Then at 36,000, the core rule book gets spiral bound upgrade. At 40,000, the companion book gets spiral bound. And then at 45,000, you get a copy of Brad Smith's Edge of the Line World War 85 series book 5. So again, in my opinion, great stretch goals. Not the only one that I would consider a game changer is the flight stand. But
that's because you're a minis guy.
Fair enough. But the thing is that it makes everything nicer. It's the polish that I think makes it, to me. I get everything in the box for that $100, $110, and this just makes it better. So I like that. We do have some add-ons to look at. There is an additional campaign, Operation Red Gauntlet, Crossing the Mighty Vesser. It's going to be a $39.99 add-on, and looks like this is going to be kind of along the same lines as the
Defense of Frankfurt.
The Defense of Frankfurt.
Mm-hmm.
I keep wanting to call it Siege of Frankfurt, and that's not right.
Could be.
Only if you
Defense. Depends on what side you are. I mean,
Right.
if you're Soviets, it's the siege, right? And that's going to give you 8 additional maps. Now, I had a question with these maps.
Mhm.
Are they going to be two-sided like Storming the Gap maps, where you've got summer on one side, winter on the other?
The Storming the Gap maps were never two-sided. You know, we actually put a second set of winter maps in the game as a stretch goal.
Okay, that was it.
Just to clarify.
Right. Yeah.
Someone asked me about adding winter maps, and the basic thing it comes down to is weight. Okay, once you get it past 10 pounds, you can't ship it through the USPS as a flat rate box.
Right.
Everyone knows the shipping is going crazy. There are no scenarios for the winter maps, and in which case, again, this is refining what we're doing. We kind of felt it was a little bit, what are we doing with these maps? They look nice and it's wintertime, but there's no scenarios. Now, there is a battle generator built into the system, I believe designed by Keith and Jeff. So you could technically play a winter map.
And the weather rules do support, snow.
Right. Yeah. So, but we just decided, depending upon how this goes, and Keith and Jeff don't beat the crap out of me, maybe we'll throw, actually this will be more of a Mark Van Marshall, but
I was going to say, Mark Van Marshall's the one who's got to do the maps.
Yeah, well, we could put winter maps in, but we just didn't feel it added enough gameplay to put the time into it.
And you're adding 8 maps to the box. That's
Right.
a lot of volume that we can use for other things.
Absolutely.
I want the other 4 maps in the base game done too, so it's 8 plus. It's actually 9 plus 4. It's 9
Geomorphic maps, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Well, there's actually 9 maps in this expansion because there's 5 scenarios, 4 of which take place on the 8-map monster map, and 1 which is an additional geomorphic map for the main game because one of these scenarios it needs that map basically, and so we provide that map, and then you use a map from the base set, and that's the one that has the West German paras in it. It's called Death from Above. So the 8-map scenario, so there's 9 maps in the expansion, and then there's 5 scenarios. Now, 2 of these are what you'd call, quote, normal size, but you have stuff like a reinforced West German armor battalion counterattacking. The British counterattacking along with the West Germans. And then you have the monster scenarios. There's one that takes place on the top half, one that takes place in the northern half, and these are the environs of Minden on the Weser. So the one takes place on the northern, around Minden itself. The other one takes place on the southern map, which is the Weser farther south where the West Germans are. And then there is what Jeff has nicknamed the Kaiju scenario, which is what we will be demoing at WBC.
Actually, Devin coined that.
Devin coined that? It was a brilliant term. It's Kaiju being monster, of course. That's Operation Red Gauntlet. And that scenario, we've tested that scenario. I was over at Jeff's house and having a blast, literally. You haven't lived until he moved an entire air assault battalion into Minden itself, seized the bridges from me, and then I counterattacked with an infantry battalion, and it was an infantry fight in the middle of Minden. It was crazy.
Oh wow! So, and it says here that to be able to play that scenario, you do have to have Blood and Fury and
Right.
Storming the Gap, and
the expansions, because there's enough units in there that are needed that you kind of need units from the first game. But that's the only scenario it hasn't. And
right,
as David said, we're trying to be upfront about that.
And I like that. And if I'm not mistaken, that's part of that golden ticket, right, David?
Right.
Right.
So yeah,
but just that super large one. I mean, the
Always
other 2
smart.
formats are,
Yeah.
We've seen games in the past where they've said, "Hey, you get 20 scenarios, but you can only use 8 of them because you need another game." So we
right.
wanted it.
Now-
We want it to be massive.
Yeah, when you if you buy Operation Red Gauntlet and don't have Storming the Gap, you're going to get 4 out of these 5 scenarios. That's going to give you 18 scenarios with the main game.
Sure. So, and honestly, for $40, in my opinion, that's a hell of a deal. That's a great deal. Now, just like you had for Storming the Gap, there is going to be a big one, all 8 maps put together in a single, into a single map.
Yeah, single configuration. I
Um,
think the graphics show the top and the bottom, rather than that's the closest.
and folks, it's big. It's 38.5 by 58. It's massive.
I can handle it.
Yeah. You got a table big enough for it. I've got a table big enough for it downstairs that I can only use during the summertime because it gets cold as ass down there during the winter.
You need to do it now, then.
Yeah.
And we're going to have this map set up. The monster scenario with the 8-piece canvas map set up at the WBC.
Okay, you guys are going to be out here to WBC.
I'm going to
Jeff
be
except for me. Jeff's in charge.
Because I mean that's like an hour and a half for me, but it just so happens that that thing runs all week, and that's the one convention. See, I've never been to a con ever, and that's the one convention that I swore to God that when I came back to this, I want to go to. And they dropped that thing. Mine would have to be like a weekend thing, and they dropped it.
But a lot of people come just for the weekend. A lot of people come just for the weekend.
So I got to make money before I can go do things like that. So
I hear that. But I totally recommend, if that's the only one you can go to, I highly recommend.
Yeah, that's a really great convention to go to.
Yeah.
And
very little naval, just so you know.
They did have a big Jutland game though.
Yes, they did. That's right.
Yeah. Now you can also purchase the artwork for Operation Red Gauntlet without any text on it. I think that's a beautiful image.
They have them here too.
If you don't, I do. I think I have the two right behind me.
But as great as this one is, I have to say the Blood and Fury cover is brilliant. I love that image.
let me ask a question now that you said that, because I don't own any of the NEW or WW or any of that. So, well, that's a lot. Okay, so I was in Germany from 81 to 87.
You're the man.
This was prime time for me.
Right.
I have it's funny too, because I'm not very interested in Cold War era games, but there are a couple that I do like. One is the SPI Central Front series that's my go-to dog for all of that stuff.
Right.
Somebody did give me a free game from you guys from a long time ago, and I mean that's the only one because they wanted to introduce me
Bridges.
To tactical. And I mean, and I know that the two systems were. I guess when you all picked up and started doing 85, you made a bunch of changes to the system.
It's incompatible because we had literally had to tear the numbers down
right,
and then build them back up again, so the numbers aren't the same, and they don't work the same because the rules aren't quite the same. It looks the same on the outside, so if you've played the old one, it's actually very easy to pick up the new one.
Right.
But the subtleties are what make it, the filling the holes and making sure the systems work and putting in new systems that weren't there, that kind of thing.
Well, I see, because your title for Volume 2 is Blood and Fury, and of course this was Blood and Bridges.
Right.
Exactly.
We tried to keep them similar as we went on, but we made a lot of design changes. The map hexes are bigger, the counters are bigger, so one of the biggest complaints we inherited was the fact that the numbers were unreadable on some of the superscript and stuff. And Keith and I, over many long phone calls and coffee, changed things and modified it. And I told people originally that, it'd be compatible because that was our intention. But after Keith and I looked at it long enough, there was just no way to keep the counter that small.
Yeah.
That's really
just the counters. I mean, it's not so much, the size of the counters was a big deal, but to address the amount of data on the counters and whether it was necessary. So when you had these faint underscores and you had an asterisk and you had, something that if you were looking at it in a normal print, reading an encyclopedia and see an asterisk, it's the size you can see it. But if it's like tucked in there on a defense value and then there's an underscore underneath the superscript,
right?
Why I began to question why it was there, and so a lot of the design process.
I would argue though, more important than the graphic distinctions are the changes in the rules, because the new system is much more streamlined. I mean, I had the whole system in the first edition, but and I really didn't have an intention of going on with the second edition when it became incompatible. But I was won over, because of those rules changes, because it's a much smoother playing game, more consistency throughout the system as well.
Okay, so in the system, the 85 system, and I got, because when it comes to tactical games, okay, so I have a shelf of squad leader stuff over there that I probably played 2 games of. right? And I don't know. I don't know why tactical didn't do it for me. Victory conditions in the different scenarios. Okay, you kind of get. I mean, what do you all do for victory conditions in these scenarios? Do you have random or miscellaneous or multiple where it's not just you get 1 point, you get 2 points, you get 3 points? I mean, do you have varying like levels or varying objectives for victory conditions in these things?
Yes to all that.
Okay,
because
good.
we have a variety of victory. We actually, it's funny. One of the latest ones to get added. There's 3. Actually, there are 3. Not so much linked as halves of scenarios that Nicholas Michon and Susan Davis developed. When I said to them, "Give me a scenario," they said, "Okay, can we give you 3 because we got ideas?" I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead." And they came up with something where you have points, and it's like points by unit, and getting things off, you get points, and eliminating things, classic stuff like that. A lot of the scenarios are you just need to get off the map and not lose a certain number of units, so it gives you a lot of flexibility. I'm big on objectives. Jeff is great at saying, all right, well, we've got this monster scenario. What is the goal of this? And it's a mix of, killing units and getting, because there's always has to be a sense of, it's not just the battle you're in, it's the next battle you're going to.
Right.
One of the things I like about the larger scenarios is you can kind of forge the victory conditions more along real combat missions and everything. So I tend to say, hey, this is what the Soviets are trying to do. Objective A, B, and C. If you get 2 out of the 3 or 3 out of the 5, you win. So it gives a lot of flexibility to how to approach the scenario. And in the larger scenarios like the Minden and Frankfurt, you got a lot of maneuver space and a lot of options. And I like to leave it open for the player to choose their course of action.
That's good, because I look at nothing turns me off more than because like I said, I love to play the monster games, the big ones. And when I set one up and there's one single objective, I'm like, you wasted all this time to build this game to give me one objective instead of. So I like the multifaceted idea where I can. Oh no! I think I'm going to go ahead and address A and this, and we'll leave B and C alone and get after it. I like that. I got one more question, Nache, and I promise I'll shut up.
No, go ahead.
If I missed it, I apologize.
That is why they're here.
Command in the game, leadership and command. How does it go into this?
So it's actually central to things. The cards that we were showing, the formation cards, have the morale training value, which is central to command in a lot of roles. The HQs, in the original World at War, there was HQ hunting. Now there's HQ hunting in every game because HQ hunting is, near as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that's a valid thing. If you see the vehicles with the whip antennas, you're going to shoot at them.
Oh, yeah.
That's my understanding. But we looked at HQs and went, it was tied to the specific unit type. So if you had a formation that was like mixed M3 Bradleys and M1s, and the HQ was an M1, and you lost your M1s but still had your Bradleys, you could never get back your HQ because you didn't have the right vehicle type. I'm like, it's kind of stood out like a sore thumb. Like, why? We shifted it to, and the other thing was and this I blame on David because he got trapped. He had his HQ trapped against a river and he couldn't move it out by one of the early playtest editions because it was assigned to a unit. And then we said, no, it doesn't really represent just the HQ. It's the HQ, it's the exec, it's, a pileup of supplies that they sent earlier, sort of retroactive. So that HQ should be able to go wherever your command emphasis is.
Right.
And that's what we did. We just said you have to deploy it to a specific unit. You can't just put it in the open on its own. It became like this super marker, if you will. But the idea is that HQ has a command radius that's on the card. NATO tends to have more, and the Pact has less. That leads right into how do we do doctrine without having a whole lot of extra rules. So it's very simple. It's geometric. NATO has, say, a command radius of 5 hexes. So here. So let's pick this. In the middle there, the yellow, the American yellow. That's green with the orange in the middle. A company of the 266th Armored Regiment. The 7 is the morale training value, but the 5 in green, in the green hex, that's its command radius from the HQ counter. So as long as his units are within 5 hexes, they're in command. NATO tends to have. They tend to be running companies, so it's 3 or 4 or 5 units within that 5 hex radius. The Pact, if you look all the way to the left, not leftmost, but one of the blue red ones, their green number is 4. they tend to have 10 to 12, maybe 13 or 14 units in a battalion, because that's their platoon tactical unit, operational unit, if you will. So they have more units in a smaller radius, which is basically what Doctrine is for. So by just adjusting the radius on the cards, we've built a Doctrine rule without having to write a Doctrine rule. And people, the behavior is what happens.
And don't forget, it's also not absolute. If you're beyond that radius, you can still try to put yourself in command by passing a morale training check.
That to me,
NATO morale is at 7. It's you can probably count on it for the most part.
Right.
Soviets not so much with a 6.
Right. And sometimes scratch forces for NATO because they're not as used to working with each other. But that to me is actually one of my favorite mechanisms, because you're not tied into that command range, because that's not realistic.
You allow for independent decision.
Right. And it's if anybody's played like Great Battles of Alexander back in the day, I'm talking like first edition, there was the whole glass wall command system. It's like I have a command radius of 3 and I have a whole line of units, and I give my runner orders for that guy over there, and he's running, but he hits the third hex and goes, oh, there's a glass wall, I can't get any farther. That didn't make any sense to me. Here it's like, it's, because you have some element of visual command, but it's obviously going to be radio command, but you only have so many tactical elements. But you can have somebody outside of that radius, either involuntarily or voluntarily. Right. It's the voluntary part of, you can push him out, but you have to understand the risk. For us, a tactical game is all about, I don't like saying no, but there are risks attached to certain things.
Well, and other than losing that command unit, that headquarters unit, and I noticed in your little Warsaw Pact, lovely choice of names for a Russian commander, Romanov. Does other than losing the unit, how do you guys incorporate degradation of leadership?
So what happens is the full side of that, the front side of that counter has a command bonus. There's a 2-1 on the physical counter. That command bonus gets added to a lot of die rolls. It makes it really, it makes it potent as far as combat. If you lose the HQ, it has to be reduced. You can't shoot at it directly. If the units and the unit it's with is reduced, or anybody in the hex is reduced, there's a chance it will be reduced. If it is reduced a second time, it's called suppressed. Then you take it off the map and put it in the suppressed box. You will never not have a leader turn to turn, but for the rest of that turn, you don't have an HQ, which means if your formation hasn't gone yet, everybody has to roll for command instead of just the people outside of the radius, which is and that really made it come to life, because you're still kind of HQ hunting, but now you've got other priorities where, is it really going to be worth it? If you kill everything in the hex, you automatically, reduce and suppress that unit. Now there's only 2 sides to the HQ. Once it's on the backside, it has less of a command bonus. It never comes back to the front. That's the degradation. However, there is a battlefield event table, and if you roll really well, we're talking really low odds, there is a chance that for the battlefield, somebody can get flipped back to the front. But generally speaking, the degradation is once you're suppressed, once you're reduced, you're reduced. You don't come back.
Right. Good. All right. Excellent.
Yeah, it's a really, really strong system. It's probably my favorite Cold War armor game, either miniatures or board game, hex and counter game, because it plays like a miniatures game, in my opinion, because there's no combat results table. Everything is done based off of the numbers that are on the counter itself. Right. Everything's right there for you to use, and with the data cards, I don't even need the counters. I can go directly to put miniatures down on a table and saying go.
Well, any game that provides smooth flow with decision making, that's awesome to me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've always been a Cold War fan for games. I started with GDW's Third World War, and their platoon level game was Assault, and I had the whole series, and I loved setting up huge, like a whole regiment of Soviets against NATO, but it was so slow. We never finished more than a few turns.
Hey, here's what I'm in the middle of right now. So, That's
Oh,
Army
wow.
Group North. So that'll be on my table for 2 months.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But I mean, and that's what I'm saying. I love the big games, but
Right.
and like I say, there are a couple people have been trying to get me to look. You need to try something tactical. My experience is very minimal. Now I watch Kev with Big Board playing.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, he does a lot of play,
the
so
tactical
it's good to
stuff
watch it.
and other, you know, and some of this stuff too. And he really gets, pardon the expression, he gets a hard on playing it. I know he does. So somewhere along the line, I got to find something to take
It's
me
the only
away
category I
from the
want to
operational stuff.
Well, there's
and
a
that's what I
starter
like
kit.
about World at War 85 is, we can play these big scenarios with a lot of units, and it moves along very quickly.
It does.
All right, I'm tempted.
Yeah.
And there is
the
a
chip
starter kit.
or the formation activation keeps everybody involved because it's one company on NATO activates, boom, you're done. Move on, next formation. The other player comes through and does.
And each shot keeps you as involved too, because there's an armor save roll or some sort of defensive bonus roll for just about every shot.
And Solitaire.
Solitaire is easy. I mean, there's two levels of Solitaire. There's Solitaire where, like me, I will play both sides. I don't care. There's Solitaire. Actually, there's 3 levels. There's Solitaire where you want to use like a solo assistant to suggest what you're doing, and then there's Solitaire where you want an AI, which we're not doing, because that would mean we'd be making a computer game that isn't the board game. It's an opponent, because anytime you make an opponent, somebody's going to figure it out. But if we just make a deck, which is what we've done with both solo assistants, it just doesn't play like you. And half of the battle when you're playing with the solo assistant cards is you pick a card and you go, "That's crazy."
Right.
And it's Solitaire. You're perfectly allowed to pick another card, ignore it, go to the next unit, whatever you want to do. But if you actually let it be crazy, you're going to find that, why, he charged me with those M1s, and oh my God, those M1s are going to assault me unless I do something about it. And then it doesn't look so crazy. It looks like you have some commander who knows what he's doing, and it was a deck.
Right.
So yeah, it's crazy. But there is a starter kit that's basically Scenario 2 from Storm the Gap, and
it's downloadable.
It's downloadable. You can put it together yourself. It's a small scenario, and it gives you pretty much all the basics from indirect fire through passengers and transports, anti-tank guided missiles, including Dragon and tow. And there's an M1 in there. There's an M106 for support, and there's BMP1s, and Saggers are flying, and there's some T-62s, which some people are like, oh, they're only T-62s. I'm like, yeah, but if you don't have them because you don't have your M1, you're in trouble.
Good stuff, guys. Good stuff.
Cool.
Real quick, Matt Schreiber says, "Hello, fellas."
Hello.
And says, "Good to hear Jeff." So he was I was telling you about the Facebook Live group that I got onto, and then Rocky's War Room. That's Matt. So howdy, Matt. Thanks for dropping in, buddy. So yeah, I am excited. This is going to be my Christmas present. I was telling my wife about it, and she said, "So when do I have to make sure I've got $150 ready?"
Trade-offs.
So now, yeah, that was the next question. I know with some Kickstarters, they don't charge the card until fulfillment happens. How does Game Found work? Is it
Game Found?
I put it in the pledge and and my card gets charged then, or how's that work?
Okay, both Game Found and Kickstarter work exactly the same way. Okay, what happens is if let's just say the campaign's a month. Okay, so you pledge it now, and you can change your order, cancel your order. There's no penalties. Nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Let's say you bid for a game on day 1, day before the last day, you cancel it. It's fine. Nothing gets happened. The day the campaign ends, within a couple of hours or days, Kickstarter or Game Found charges you for the game. You get charged right away. What does not happen is the shipment and any add-ons you buy after the campaign gets charged when we get ready to ship it from China.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's how that works.
Okay. So I can be one of the first 100, get it for $140 because I'm going to get both. But that 140 is not going to hit my card until the day or so after the campaign closes.
Correct.
And then an additional 20 or 25 or whatever it works out to be for shipping will then hit when it's actually in a box ready to come over from China.
Correct.
To y'all. Now, fulfillment, my understanding is fulfillment is boxes is retail ready to go at China. It'll be put in a big master pack, and that goes to Colorado, where you will then fulfill from there, or does it get fulfilled directly from China?
No, we fulfill it here.
Okay.
And the guys who order it over, now just so you know, this was a little bit of a controversy that came up, just, I guess, miscommunications. Any place that has a friendly zone, okay, and it's on the shipping, it says it's Canada, UK, EU, I don't know if there's another one, but on US, I can't forget that. There is no customs, there is no VAT, okay? Now, I'm going to say that with this caveat. If, let's just say we make arrangements with certain companies, and I'll pick on England. Second Chance Games, great partner of ours. They're not part of the EU anymore. As an American guy, I keep forgetting that. But
right.
Yeah. So we pay the VAT. It's already included into the game costs, and it's shipped over to that company. That company takes those games, charges for the shipping. There is some type of fee for importing it, but it's not like some incredible fee for the VAT. Okay, and then that's mailed off to the users there. There is a slight delay. Shouldn't be more than a week, honestly, at this point, the way we've arranged it with Second Chance Games. But barring, again, natural disasters, COVID outbreaks, and things like
Sure.
that.
Okay. So if, let's say, somebody is in Belgium, you're going to have a EU partner that is going to fulfill for you, so they don't have to worry about shipping from the US.
Correct.
And VAT is already taken into account from the original price that they're pledging.
Well, when they get their shipping rates, it'll be with. What happened was I put the pledge manager up in the shipping as if you're shipping from the US to, let's just say, the UK. Because, God forbid, Second Chance Games goes out of business. And actually had it happen, not this campaign, but the campaign before with Canada. The company went out of business. Okay. And we made an arrangement to ship the games up there. And then FedEx said, oh, we were wrong. And they charged everybody, it's not that, but whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah, I remember. I remember that kerfuffle.
Yeah, so that was wanted to be avoided. So if for some reason they had it to ship, that's what the shipping is. But they'll know because they're going to get charged for it when it gets ready to ship.
Right.
Okay? But should be much cheaper, and I'm going to put those up too. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down the price it is from the US with a slash, and then that'll be the friendly price, so they will know what it should be.
Right.
The problem is I don't want it to be where these people are getting hit with these prices and they don't understand what happened. And that's
exactly
with the Canadians last time, and that was unfair on them and on us because it wasn't anything we tried to do.
Sure. All right.
Well, I'll give you all this for sure. I don't have many of them. I've seen a bunch of the games and stuff from Lock and Load. You all were kind enough to send me the Atlanta campaign to let me get that ahead of time, and I think for an initial piece of the ACW from you guys, that was a great start to that thing, and I kind of would like to see a couple more show up for that. But I will say this: the quality, the hexes, the maps, love it. So,
yeah, the everything that I've seen or have physically touched from Lock and Load is honestly, there's nothing that I've seen is any better. I mean, there plenty of games are just as good, but in quality of product, but nobody surpasses what gets done at Lock and Load. And
that's all David. We give him stuff in crayon.
Oh,
and then he turns it into what you say.
Yeah, I'm going to draw this map out on a piece of slate and charcoal.
Actually, if you saw the sketch maps that I gave on Marshall, speaking of a miracle worker, he's like, sketch it out. I'm like, okay, and I kind of sketch it out, and it looks like throwing paint on there. And he comes back with the maps you see, and I'm like, on the first draft, and they're like, did I do that? I didn't do that. He did that.
So I know that the Storming the Gap monster map of Fulda Gap, it is as close to realistic as you can get, while still being within the design.
Geomorphic, yeah.
Is the Operation Red Gauntlet map based off of a real area?
Oh yeah. Okay. The northern half it's the city of Minden, and the Vezzer runs right there, and the Vezzer runs north to south on the map, right down the center of the 8 maps.
Okay.
And it's a great question. It's a great thing you brought that up, because the Minden maps, as we call them, all 8, the outside edges are geomorphic. So for some,
but
it's
the internal ones are.
Yeah, the internal ones are not, because we made that decision because we're like, for the big map, it really is about the big map. I mean, you want to be able to put other maps on it, and you can literally put the Defense of Frankfurt map next to the Minden map because it's geomorphic on the outer edges. But the interior ones were like, no, let's give the actual terrain.
Oh, and I'm 100% on board with that. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it gives it a really amazing feel when Jeff puts one of his amazing scenarios on there, and you're like, you can see me from where?
Yep.
We've literally had shots across the 8 maps with anti-aircraft.
Nice. E4 Airman was happy to get the clarification on how the cards will get charged, and he says, "Love the rounded counters from Lock and Load." Absolutely.
No, you have to clip. No,
no.
I'm very happy not clipping.
They're not clipping,
Jeff,
right?
Jeff,
Not Jay, not me, not clip, not clip me, not Jay.
Jeff.
Nibs. Nibs. I mean, I played the original, first edition Highway to the Reich back in the day.
Oh.
I never would have thought of clipping. And then,
and then when I learned it was toenail clippers.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And you're doing what with a toenail clipper?
Hey,
but now it's a thing. I mean, I think it's fun. To have clippers versus non-clippers, but the rounded corners. I mean, I'm sorry, that's for me.
Oh yeah. I clipped GTS, the 3 Beach one from MMP, and then I clipped Atlantic Wall from Decision Games.
Oh, I love Atlantic Wall. Well, actually, I'm thinking the SPI Atlantic Wall is what we played.
I never had that one, and of course I'm one of those dumbasses that had Campaign for North Africa. In fact, I got Campaign for North Africa at the store down in Falls Church, Virginia, that just closed. Before I was leaving for Germany, and I walked in there and I bought a game, and I walked up I was talking to the guy at the counter. He's a big old boy. That was years ago, and I told him I was leaving. He said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He says, "You go pick out any game you want in the store, and I'll give it to you for free." Never tell an SPI gamer he can go grab it. Because I went right for Campaign for North Africa. And then I don't know what I did with that game years later. Gone.
Oh, no.
Just stunned. No. I love those big things, those big games like that. That's my preferred to play is that. But you know how that goes. You get something on the table and you're playing it for a month. And you're like, man, I need something I can play in a couple of days.
Right. So. Well, we wouldn't even play on the table. We'd play on the floor.
Yeah.
So that's all the space we had. But Atlantic Wall, I remember the first time we played it, and we had to redo the paradrops 3 times because we screwed them up.
And people, most people that I talk to today, because I only came back 2 years ago, is they were not fond of, was it Decision Games version of Highway to the Right? But I had that first one from SPI. I love that big old soapbox. That was one of my favorite games. That and their Mock Dom Rhine.
And I loved second edition of Highway to the Right.
I've not gotten into it yet.
They tweak some stuff and everything. I mean, I can go into a very long conversation about playtesting versus reality, but it's a wonderful dramatic game, and we always had so much fun with it. You haven't lived until the entire British First Airborne is sitting on the Arnhem Bridge. Now you got a problem if you're the Germans.
Good stuff, guys. Good stuff.
Okay, hold on one quick second.
we're waiting for Nache's lead. Like, Nache, are you there? Are you there?
Hold on.
He's digging up like his copy.
He's digging. He's been buying a couple of Hex Encounter games here recently. Usually it was just me and Wardrobe and McMurray every now and then. And also now he's all over it.
He's kicked us out. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
No, for those that are uninitiated, what we're talking about on the counters, right here, you can see. Hold on one second. They're pre-clipped.
They're not pre-clipped. They're rounded.
Yeah.
I object, Your Honor. They're not pre-clipped. They're rounded.
That's it. I'm taking my 3.0 to him.
No, that whole thing came about because I was arguing with somebody about clipping. I said, that's just such a waste of time. That's time you could be playing the game, damn it. You're clipping the counter.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, and one of the things that I didn't like was, you remember the old games, guys, and you had the counters all next to each other, and all of a sudden the Soviet red is drifting onto the NATO green.
Yeah, bad bleed. Bad bleed.
Yeah, I hated that.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, can we round the edges so there's no reason to clip it? And I said, and what if we leave a space so this way if it's off, because you never know what these printers are going to do, it'll bleed onto a spot no one gives a crap, because if it bleeds that far over, the counters are no good anyway.
Right.
And everyone said, oh, that's ridiculous. You're going to lose counters. And I said, oh, just on a counter sheet. And that's pretty much why you have what you got there.
So
There's the M1.
also to give people an idea, this is the size of the counters. And
yes, Virginia, that is the M1 Abrams Platoon.
yes, that's your M1. And so just, of course, it gives you the name of the unit. This side is your anti-armor value. That is your range at 11 hexes. That is your
Firepower.
4 dice,
Mm-hmm.
needing 5s, correct? If I remember correctly.
Yes, that's correct.
And then this is your HE value, which is like your machine guns and whatnot.
And your
with,
HE shells.
Yeah. With 5 hexes, 3 dice, needing 5s. This is your armor value. You get 4 dice using 5s. And if anybody watched my videos that I talked about this on, I did quite a few videos. And I don't know if it just worked out this way or it was actually planned, but doctrinally, a platoon of M1s is 4 tanks. Well, I'm using 4 dice for my 4 tanks.
It's kind of accidental.
On the
okay.
on the Soviets, it's 3 dice. I thought that it was like, was it on purpose or was it just one of those serendipitous things?
It's kind of serendipitous because the development behind, for example, the T80 and all of the 125 millimeter fin stabilized smoothbores was that they have the autoloader, and the autoloader slows down your rate of fire. That's one thing it does do. So they started with 4 dice because they're a 120 or higher, basically.
Yeah.
It's equivalent of a 1. This is a 105, but we took 1 die away because of the autoloader. It literally is how does the piece of equipment affect how many shells you can throw down range in 5 to 15 minutes? And there's a significant reduction, more than a 16% reduction with the autoloader, and that meant the 1 die.
Sure.
So, but yeah, it is kind of serendipitous.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's your speed in hexes. Now, what's interesting is that the color of the background circle tells you whether it's amphibious or not.
Yes.
And I can't remember if there's anything else color wise there, but
if
definitely
it's blue, it's amphibious. If it's blue and green split between the two, then it's an amphibious transport, and you need to distinguish
that's
between
right.
what's a transport and what's
Yeah.
not. If it's green, it's a ground transport. So like your M113s will have that 6 with a green
Right.
background.
Okay. And then for the life of me, I cannot remember what this number.
Assault.
Oh, that's
dice
right,
To make
assault,
4s,
yes.
5s, or 6s. Very important.
Yeah. So when you're rolling up on infantry,
Yeah, you're at a disadvantage with it, just infantry, but still.
shoot the hell out of them first, and then roll up on them,
Yeah.
and make sure you've got infantry with you. So I like that also is because you don't want to roll up on infantry in tanks with just tanks.
One of the things we wanted to do was, I mean, the modifiers are very simple and the penalties are very simple, but they respond to real world tactics. So people are like, why, when I charge with my infantry across the open, does he constantly beat me off? Well, have you suppressed him with indirect fire? Is he disrupted so he can't shoot at you? Have you reduced him and disrupted him? You know, have you prepared your approach? And they're like, well, no. I'm like, well, there you go. You know,
That's your problem.
always keep a reserve. You know, the one thing I like about it is you get to think with proper tactics.
Right, exactly. So Jeff, this is the HQ marker.
Yep.
And you just place it with one of the units in that with that
Formation. That
formation. Thank you. Yeah. That 2 allows you to add 2 dice on the attack. If you get reduced, you can tell you will always be able to tell when you're reduced because you've got a white stripe along with the color band, and then now it's a 1, so it only adds 1. And then if it goes kablooey, well, you put it into the suppressed box, and it'll come back later, but only at the reduced size. So, yeah, there you have it.
Cool. Thank you.
It's a great game. Now, are the dice are going to be the same quality? I suspect.
That's the plan. Until I
We
get.
hope.
Yeah. Well, let me just check something. I can just check. This is
I know you're going to have 3 blue, 3 red, and 3 green.
I thought we were going to have 4 blue, 4 red, and 3 green.
Let me just see. Hold on.
Dave.
This, I don't know if you guys can see this. I would say it's probably the same. This is the dice from Point Blank.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you can pretty much see it's the same exact dice. You're going to have rounded edges. It's 16 millimeters, so they're not some teeny microscopic dice. But these aren't the right colors. Well, the green is.
So the green is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Green, red, and blue, if I read correctly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know you guys are excited about it. I'm super excited. Looking forward to it. Like I said, this is going to be my Christmas present. So, yeah. Anybody out there in Chatland got any questions? I know they had a ton of them on your live stream.
They like to harass us more.
Yeah.
Come on. Nothing beats that little bit.
That classic Avalon Hill die. Yeah. Or is that the tiny SPI blowing up?
Tiny SPI. Love those things.
Yeah. Didn't even know how they made those things.
What you want?
No.
A lot less noise late at night in the dice tower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's next? What once we get
Oh, okay.
Blood and
It's not even out. They
Fury?
want to know what's next. No, it's fine. What's next in the series? I didn't
Yeah.
want to jump on you.
Yeah.
We actually have some options. What we had to do, what happened was before we started wrestling with shipping production issues, which took us to, and Game Found was like, we're going to do 1 box. Blood and Fury was much bigger. The Fury part was basically a Scandinavian, not a Danish part of it. So, and we realized we couldn't fit everything in, so we kind of
All
split
right,
it out.
let's check that. I said we.
You.
No, you guys.
Oh, you can take the blame if you want. That's fine. I'm happy to hand you the blame. But we ended up having to split up what we had, and what we did was we made a game called We Shall Hold. and it's it's in development basically. So it's not like anywhere near ready, but it
No,
has the Belgians, the Dutch, and the Canadians to go with more Soviets because there's lots of Soviets, and that's sort of a split north-south. I have an idea. Don't hold me to this, but this is just to excite you guys for no reason in case it doesn't happen. If anybody's ever read the book First Clash, which is about is a training exercise written in '94 as a narrative for the Canadians, for the Canadian 4th Mechanized Brigade, which was posted to Germany, and it has nice maps. And they're about the size of a monster map, so I could actually do that scenario as the monster thing if Jeff's amenable to that. And we would build, and that's southern Germany, so we wouldn't have a northern Germany, but we'd still have, the Belgians and the Dutch, and the regular scenarios would be set in northern Germany, and then the Canadians would be down in southern Germany and have the monster thing with everybody else. So We Shall Hold has the Canadians and the Belgians and the Dutch as a centerpiece. And then Nicholas Michon has been working diligently on a French module. So, and the French are not like anybody plays them or jokes about them. They really do have good weapons, good organization, and
Absolutely.
morale and all sorts of stuff. So I haven't seen that in a platoon level tactical game, period. So Nicholas, who is French, of course, he's throwing me all this primary research, and I'm like, not only is it fascinating, but it's totally in depth. And once again, one of the strengths of this series is, as far as I'm concerned, is every army has its own feel. The French are not going to feel like anybody else. First of all, their companies are a little bit larger. So you're going to have 5 base platoons in a lot of organizations when you activate your twice.
Wow.
They do tend to have lighter armor, but they've got more of it. So it's just going to be different. He's coming up with something that he says their anti-aircraft doctrine was different, and they had a lot of vehicles that actually had an extra 20mm cannon strictly for anti-aircraft. I don't know how that's going to work out in companion rules. I'll let you know, but that's the thing. So it's going to be an exciting module. Again, in development. America Breached is down the line there.
Well, okay, so can you take? No, this is really out there. I'm going to wonder if this is in the back of your all's heads. Okay, so when you tell somebody like me who was in Germany,
right?
In the 80s,
I'm scared of you when you tell me that.
I know that East and West German border. Okay.
Yes.
My GDP for 568 armor, I was in a scout platoon of 568 armor, was plugging holes just south or just below 11th ACR. Okay.
Right.
Is there the potential, or you'll have the thought of taking this fight back to the east?
As in crossing the border back to East Germany?
Yeah, going. Yeah.
I was talking when we were talking, to start with before we first came on. We were actually talking about that, where the plan for the series is that these are all first moves. So getting to a counterattack back into East Germany is not in the plan, but the whole point to this thing is these are all really kits. You're going to have your scenarios. If all you want to do is play the scenarios, you're good. And that's what most gamers do, as far as I'm concerned. That's what I used to do. But because the pieces are available, the maps are geomorphic, the color band is not married to a specific unit, it's married to a card, and you can change that card. You can make those formations, and if you wanted to do a counterattack, you have East German units, you have Soviet units. Yeah, you could do that. Somebody could just write a scenario that says you need to have Storming the Gap because it's got the East Germans in it, and then use any Russians in any scenario and use any set of maps turned around. Take the Defense of Frankfurt maps, turn them around a notch or two, and now you've probably got something that's similar to, the mountains of East Germany there on the border.
Right.
That's
Although
the kind of thing.
I would love to get a monster map of that, the area around the border, like Hunfeld and Fulda.
Oh man, you're killing me, Jeff. I'd love to. But you're talking about a counterattack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like the first day of the war to see how that goes.
Well, yeah,
I did make counters for a Soviet for the 79th Tank Division. Yeah,
that's right, you did. Yeah.
Well, I mean, every unit's GDP when I was there was it. I mean, granted, the plan was there for us to first strike, all right, or initiate. It wasn't ever going to happen, but 90% of our training was just Warsaw Pact onslaught.
Right.
I mean, that's what we prepped for nonstop.
Right. But we could absolutely do a scenario right now with what we have. Even Storming the Gap, you can translate that to 7th Corps. And, you know, if let's say we did historical maps, you know, on the border or whatever it is, yeah, you can have a NATO attack. I mean, that's one of the reasons in the Operation Red Gauntlet, we have 2 NATO counterattack scenarios. They're local.
And
but
the defense of Frankfurt has a NATO offensive.
Yeah. And then they're the West Germans, you know, you've got if you anybody who's played Storming the Gap knows what one company of Leo 2s can do to, you know, Soviet battalions and East German battalions.
Lethal.
This has
Make
2.
them evaporate.
Yeah, this has 2 plus Leo 1s plus Panzer Grenadiers, and it's like that's a counterattack, and it's a counterattack.
Yeah.
So I think people want to hit back, but in terms of design your own, absolutely you could do that.
So, and I'm not looking to put more onto the plate than is necessary. However, has there ever been thought of designing just scenario packs where I've got Storming the Gap with these maps and these units and these counters I have? I'm going to go and for $25 buy just another 8 or 9 scenarios.
8 or 9, you're killing me.
3 or 4, 3 or, you know, or
3 or 4,
you know, whatever works out. But has that ever been thought of? You know, that. And again, not wanting to put more on the plate than.
No, I'm going to let David answer that one.
It has been discussed. Okay, I was threatened with very bad violence from certain people on the screen. Okay, you know what? If we had we have done a little bit of that. I mean, we only did 1 or 2 scenarios. I think Nicholas did Sky Soldiers for Storming the Gap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say yes. We also now have 2 games out, and we're much further along with, let's say, game 3, 4, or 5 than we were with game 2 when game 1 was completed. And we wanted game feedback. So yes, there can be scenarios, they can be maybe even extra maps, but I don't want it to take it away from Keith and Jeff, who are working on the newest stuff. So we had to find somebody who gels well with the team, and we'll work with it. So it's a possibility. It's a possibility of adding. We even talked roughly before, again, I was threatened about adding both games together, both 8 maps. He's laughing, you see? He's laughing to make and we even talked about it, and we even said, well, maybe you can move from one map over to the other maps. Because hey, when you move off this road, it's 6 moving points to get to the other map, something like that. So, I mean, the genius that Keith and Jeff put into this game is by using the cards instead of the chits. You can take that same, let's say, great Soviet force or NATO force, and the tank is still a tank. You get 100 tanks or you got 5 tanks, the tank operates the same. What deteriorates in combat? It's the leadership, getting information, knowing what's going on and why you're getting killed. You want to
the organization deteriorates. Yeah.
And those cards let you take the same unit and say, well, you used to have a command of this, and now you're really being beaten up, so your command is this, and make a new scenario without having to change the counters and redo them. So we could do all that, and we do plan it, but we're trying to. I'm trying not to kill them.
It's a compliment as far as I'm concerned that people feel so creative and want to play more in the world of World War 85. We're hoping to provide people enough scenarios to fend them off so that we can get the whole thing up and running, and then everybody can play. And there's nothing to stop anybody from writing a scenario. If you guys have a scenario and you write it, you can send it in to us, and we'll test it. And that means that, we do what's called play balancing, which is, we'll figure out if it works. And if it doesn't quite work, if you don't mind us tweaking it, we'll tweak it and we'll see. Because PDFs, well, David may hit me for this, but PDFs are easy. Getting the content into those PDFs is the hard part. So if you guys do have to work for us and present it, you don't have to do artwork or anything, just write it out. we'll get people to pre-format it, and we'll take the art, and if there is no art and we like the scenario, then we'll get the art. If you get a really wacky.
And also, I'll remind everyone, we do have 4 more scenarios for the defense of Frankfurt.
Yeah, they're in my pipeline. That's all my fault.
Yeah.
So, and whether that comes out as a scenario pack, I'm not sure. But I have a lot of work to do on that, because they're all monster scenarios. They're all in the defense of Frankfurt, because Jeff did that. And that means there's a lot of artwork and there's a lot of proofing. And we were trying to get this out.
Yeah.
Right. Like I said, in my mind, this is either something that somebody else, like David was saying or Keith saying, that somebody else comes up with the scenarios and sends them in, or we just be patient and wait for them to come through the pipeline. But it's just, I was wondering if that was something that
I can only say yes.
Yeah,
we always
we're,
I mean,
we're always looking for talent.
As Keith said, he's the
I'm the pipeline. David and I have talked about, well, what if we just did scenarios this? And I have explained to him that because of the quality of the graphics that we put into it, because I'm like, let's just put it out as a PDF. He's like, no, it has to go through layout. It has to go. They're like, oh, okay. So it actually is a major process to make a scenario pack.
Right.
But scenarios are the name of the game for people who don't want to do your design your own. So we're very conscious of that. It's just that we're kind of giving you a new game in the meantime. And we try to build as much replayability into the existing scenarios.
Honestly, there's a lot of replayability because, just the very fact of the variable activation. Each time you play the game, you're never going to have the same activation twice.
Right.
That in and of itself is going to change the way the game is played. So, real quickly, Reese left us. He had to go to bed. Todd Wardrobe plays.
Hey, Todd, how you doing, buddy?
Says, okay, here for the good part. What's next? Which is what we were just talking about. John says, and the bad part? The bad part is getting down on the floor and playing on the floor, John. Earlier, he said he would only play on the floor unless you have 911 on speed dial.
It wasn't recent that
on
we
your
did
neck, John.
It was a long time ago.
Paul Beckus is here. Says, hey, everyone. Hi, Paul. Sorry I didn't mention you earlier, but glad you're here. John says, kind of defeats the purpose of the Soviet Union making the huge decision to attack the West if they are going to dance in East Germany. Well, again, John, that's going to be the counteroffensive. That's the Americans and the West Germans and the Canadians.
We're going to change his name to Punchline John.
Yeah, right.
We're going to call the counterattack Operation Longshore, because that just sounds really cool.
I like it. Before Airman wants to know Russia versus China.
Oh, wow. Okay. Has this been thought of? Oh, yeah.
We actually have about 10 or 12 where we actually sat down. Keith and I wrote this whole big plan at one point of how the history was going to go. What
we still have it.
Yeah. The only part of what Keith and I didn't want to do is say, hey, this happened and aliens came down and this got changed. We basically, the only part of, let's say, world events that we changed was we assassinated Gorbachev, which didn't happen. Everything else we took that actually happened. So you don't have to remember some fake history if you can remember what really happened as far as the assassination of Sadat. We actually had worked that into what that was leading to. So there's Arab Israelis, there's Korea, there's China and Russia. What else do you got there, Keith? Oh, up in the north, Norway.
Eventually the Japanese are going to be in it.
Right.
You don't sit across from Russia in a world war and get to sit there and kind of go.
We're not going to say who, where, why, but there might even be an invasion of, America and fighting at the Alamo all over again. We don't know.
Don't say Alamo to Nache. We'll be here for another 2 hours. Can I still pick up Storming the Gap anywhere?
There's about 25 copies from us. There might be less than that. I have seen orders going through. And there is the expansion The play mat's still available, and the base game is too.
Yeah, I do recommend if you get the base game to get the expansions because there's a lot of material.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
And you could just buy that and play that forever, but we want you to buy Blood and Fury.
Quit talking. I'm ordering. Quit talking.
Shut up. Be quiet. I'm ordering. Don't startle him. He's ordering.
Yeah. John says, I'm clueless about what the Chinese army would even have equipment and unit wise. Well, you know what? That's why we've got Keith and Jeff.
And that's why they're not allowed to make scenarios.
Yeah,
Right.
I actually, one of the things. No, I'm going to finish what you're saying.
I was going to say, you know, and their tank was basically a T-54 knockoff, you know, and they kind of had the same thing, like a cheap version of like the M113, but a lot of it was leg infantry too. They only had, you know, relatively speaking, a few mechanized forces. So,
yeah, and the thing is that I do have those equipment lists from 1985 because I found a great resource that allowed me to do the initial, you know, I had to re-research everything, every weapon. And, you know, part of it was we had this old counter set that was like, why is this in here? So finally we kind of tossed it out and said, well, what should we have? And, it, you know, it's the military balance, basically. And it's a professional, you know, magazine, book. And if you got it nowadays, you know, you'd have to be a member of a specific thing, and it's $400. But the one from 1985 was $8. And it has exactly what equipment they had and what was on order. And since this is an alternate history game, I said right out of the gate, anything that's on order is fair game to have in the game as well. And they may not get it. Like, for example, I forget which missile it was that Nicholas pointed out. Oh, shoot. It was a French, I think it was a French anti-tank missile. I'm not even sure. But it said, you know, for 85 that it was on order. But in actual fact, in the real world, it didn't show up for like 5 years because of production issues, which can happen. But I'm like, look, it's a game. We're just going to do that.
We don't know
so I
anything
have the Chinese
about
listing. I have every country, basically. Every country. I have their equipment.
Todd wants to know what percentage of the current scenarios have been played. In my case, I'm terrible at getting them all played on my tactical scenario games.
Todd, you mean Storming the Gap in the expansion games? Or are you talking Blood and Fury playtesting? All of them.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah, all of them.
Personally,
I
I
don't want to release a scennario without somebody looking at that. That doesn't make any sense. You know, it'll
Right.
break. I mean, they break on their own because of the, you know, the replayability factor.
Well, Todd and I started ASL Starter Kit 1, and we played the first scenario. I mean, we were both playing it and videoing it.
Right.
And then we set up scenario 2, and that's where it ended. What he's saying, I know exactly what we're both of us are terrible about the continuation working through a series or.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it's for me. I'm kind of like, I'll pick a scenario I like rather than try and play through them sequentially. But a lot of people are very kind about playing through sequentially and finding the little things we tucked in there. Like if you play it sequentially, it's not programmed instruction, but each scenario kind of adds a layer of the rules to it until you get to the things, and you can always double back and add more. But it kind of got accidentally written that way because we're like, well, we have to put this in some kind of order where people can actually learn it. Blood and Fury less so because, you know, there's a lot of people who have played it, but again, that's where the learner scenarios, we have a table of, you know, how many maps are in each scenario and what we recommend as the learning scenarios. And the one thing about the learning scenarios, we're like, there's a battlefield event card that keys to a random events table. It's like, don't use that for a learning scenario because it just, you know, that's for veteran players or people who just want, you know, randomness.
I will bring out to the talking about scenarios again, the companion book, okay, which was it's an upgrade from the old modules and scenarios. Keith now has all these maps designed with Jeff and the rest of the team that shade the map where you can start. They now have solo setups, which we didn't even mention. So we give you solo setups. So it allows you. There's a lot more involved than just, you know, here's a couple of forces, put them on this hex. Here's a couple of forces, put them in that hex.
Yeah, we had I've been telling people this for probably a couple of years now, is because people would ping us for, you know, proofing and typos and stuff, and I'm like, we were working really hard and really fast to get Storming the Gap out, and I'm glad we did. All that stuff falls on me, so I'm like, well, lessons learned. I'm going to redesign this process so that it's easier to proof. And one of the things that we're going to be leveraging in Blood and Fury is, you have your playable area map, and here's your maps. It's nice, it's pretty. I'm like, no. This needs to be a helpful graphic of here's Soviet setup area 1. Because if you have like an irregular area, it's across the river, down the road, past grandma's house, past this town. If you describe that with hex calls, you have to proof every one. But if you describe it as Soviet setup area 1 and put a graphic on the map, it's pretty easy to find. And if you make that transparent, you can see it on the map, and then you can see it on your maps, and then you visually can identify where things are. Now, grant you, not everybody responds to visual, but trying to proof 6 different points to describe an irregular area is crazy. So we tried to back off of that and put as much graphically on the map. And as we went through the development process, we're like, wow, this really works well. Because I only have to make sure this formation actually is starting in Soviet Area 2 rather than have the hex description. Now, objectives still need to have hexes. But on that map, I can say, well, here's where you put the objective marker. But here's the whole town that it describes in its 5 hexes, and visually say it rather than say it includes all the contiguous hexes. It's described there. You can see it on the map. The other thing is, if I accidentally, and this will be me because I'm going to take it on me, if I accidentally make a bad hex call, I'm going to put something in that says if there's a difference between the hex call and the map wins. So there's an automatic default. It's just much easier to visually proof a map than it is to proof all those hex calls. It's literally like taking the screws out of a thing and making it welded. So that's the attitude we took for everything, basically. And there's also a lot more people looking at it than just me now.
Well, guys, we're coming up on almost 2 hours. I appreciate y'all's time this evening, especially you guys on the East Coast. It's pushing 11 o'clock now.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time, not just tonight, but the time and effort you're putting into this game. It's a wonderful system. I love it. I will, I'm definitely in for the long haul. Originally I was thinking, I'll get Storming the Gap, and because it's Fulda, and that's where my dad was supposed to go if he got called up, and then they're probably going to do what was then called America Conquered. We're now calling America
Breached,
which I prefer the name America Breached, because of Texas, hopefully. But
not,
you know what?
Not Florida.
No
Florida.
I'm sucked in 100% on all of them, because I just just the concept of having everything and possibly eventually putting everything together. Two real quick things. We don't need to go in depth, but where are we on the air game? And where are we on the naval game? And we don't have to go into depth. We just
no. The air game is
naval
behind this. It's on the table there, and all the counters are scrunched up for the moment because I basically made some major progress on systems, like how's this game going to feel in terms of turns and the campaign, and what's the goal. Made some really good progress. The combat system really is evolving to be exciting in a World of War 85 way, which was the intent. So it's in development, and this kind of literally pushed the pieces aside. So,
sure.
But we're making progress. My next step is to I actually brought in Brad Smith, who's our author, but also he did his own game, NATO Air Commander, so he's knowledgeable. Nicholas Michon is on the team. He's actually a huge air game fanatic, and he brought somebody on our team who was a French fighter pilot who flew Mr. F-1s. And so we've got a lot of good people on the team, and Jeff if he wants, but he's got a lot on his plate. So we're gonna take that to the initial rules draft, and then go from there. The naval game, my understanding is the rules went out.
I got that one for you.
Okay.
The naval game is scenarios have been play tested. Okay. Now I know you're not a big naval guy, but if you like the Storming the Gap and hopefully Blood and Fury, you should find the naval game extremely fun. I mean, we played that at a con before the Great Pandemic, and we had a blast. I
Oh
mean,
my goodness.
I really enjoyed that. It may be a Kickstarter by the end of the year.
Oh, okay.
Or crowdfunding. So it's moving along pretty quickly. The artwork is, we originally were going to use silhouettes, black silhouettes, like the old Fleet series from Victory Games, if you guys remember that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
we got Ben Rollins, and he's done a great job in making us shift silhouettes, tops and bottoms, and putting the data on data cards. So I think you're going to see the same thing with the North Atlantic, and the gentleman who's designing that is retiring from the Marines, and I believe he's traveling now a little bit, looking for a little bit of a break, but he really did an excellent job right out the gate on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding.
He was all about the data. I saw his spreadsheets.
Good.
They were impressive.
Because with adding those two to the mix, I can play Red Storm Rising.
And maybe even finish a scenario in 12 hours.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. So, all right, gentlemen. Again, I want to thank you. E4 Airman, I think, said it best just before he logged off, and said, "This was a really great show. Thank you." It was, guys. Thank you very much. It's appreciated. When we get closer to fulfillment, or after we get fulfillment, and I've got it in my hot little hands, I'd love to have you back on, and I'd love to do a live unboxing with you guys. So
If David lets us play.
we do get two prototypes, and the prototypes are actually what becomes produced. Okay, that's the whole reason we're doing it this way. And if you guys can play online and you're willing to do an unboxing, do some playing, I just want to get someone who will do more than an unboxing, so the consumers and the gamers and the guys who want to get this can see exactly what's going on.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely.
You can
I can.
Yeah, and there's no naval units, so I know he'll be up for playing.
Just give me a couple of H1s, H64s, a hind here and there. I'm good. We're close air. I'm good. That boat shit can stay out.
Yeah, if I'll be more than happy to do some videos of play, do some live plays. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Well, thank you guys very much for having us.
Yes, thank you for
It's
having
our
us.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
I'm going to go ahead and sign off for the night. Y'all don't have to jump off right away, but I'm going to go to my my end thing here, and then we'll be out. But we'll be right back. And until next week, we'll see you on the flip side.